Hey guys, welcome back to Gears of Progress. Today I'm going to be working on some couple flat rides and some finishing up the building details in the park. And this is going to be, this is the last video on Gears of Progress. Even though it's already been out on the workshop for a couple weeks now, I've just kind of been, slow on making this video. But I'm finally going to finish it and I'm going to show you some of the things I did for Gears of Progress and finishing up the London city that goes next to the train tracks, and I wanted to also accompany this ride with a couple flat rides because I feel like that would be too by itself. Well, it would be by itself without some flat rides introduced. So I did the double inverted swing coaster, basically put underground and then a factory built on top of it, and there would be a cutaway so you can see inside the warehouse, or this factory, which I later called the Nolan's Ironworks. And that's kind of what I thought, because again with the double inverted flat ride, inverted spinning, I can't even talk, it doesn't feel like it would match the theming, so I had to hide it somehow, and then also, yeah, I had to hide it. It just doesn't match unless it's like, unless you're doing sci-fi or something. It doesn't match the type of time period I was going for, which was 1860s London, industrial age type of feel. So I felt like just hiding it inside a factory and then giving it some factory details like gears and pipes, and naming it an ironworks also helps out with what it's supposed to be. So I kind of just wanted to hide it away inside this building, kind of put it down to the ground. It actually worked out pretty well, and it's covered by rain, so it doesn't, or has rain protection, so it doesn't have that issue when it rains in this map, that it still operates. The gears was just kind of a afterthought in a way, putting them inside the center. They really don't do much, except for maybe kinetic energy or something like that. You want to add some motion, because the ride moves a lot when it's in operation. And then adding simple details for a shelf with the veranda pieces and some pillars, and then your wonderful barrels. And then the main floor is the metal floor that is colored to a tan brownish color. It looks like planks. This is a good piece to use for like boats and for planks of wood without using the veranda piece over and over again, because I like to use different textures of pieces to simulate other materials. That's the cool thing about this game's simple textures, is that you can make them look like a different material. Same thing like with the brick wall piece, I can make those gray, so it's not as a typical red brick form. It would give you a gray concrete brick or something like that. So it kind of messing around with colors changes the material of that said piece. Here is a furnace that is cut away, so we're going to see some fire action later. I'll put some fire and some coal in it, so that's the furnace that helps with the metalworks, or whatever, ironworks basically. Doing my normal border work with the shaped cubes, and then adding some brick corners to the building to give that structure that it's some type of tall building and some factory of some sort. Some pipes to add some more details and give it that factory look. I could have done also with these pipes, I could have made them out of the shape pieces again, but these pipes work just as well for quicker work versus doing it by hand with the shapes, because those take a dedicated time to make them the size I want and then place them down, and then add like brackets in between to make them look like pipes with the horizontal disc pieces from the shapes. So it's always a good thing to mix it up here and there, but I wish the pipes were colorable, but I'm using what we got. And I know there's pipes on the workshop that I could probably take from. They're like air conditioning pipes. I don't know if they're recolorable. They might be. I think they might be resizable, but I haven't looked again. So here was a little interesting issue with the water towers I want to try to put down. Water towers cannot be raised by using the shift key. So keep that in mind. If you want to make it more elevated, you can always lift ground to help you out. So I had to lift ground right at that two tile pieces and make them up level so that I can put the water towers down in those specific spots. So again, water towers don't like to raise up. Neither do well, yeah, both water towers don't do it, and I think there's some other props that don't do that as well. So it happens. Here I did some. This would be the chimneys for the furnace. So these are the angled chimney pieces, and I kind of made them into a circle to kind of give it that angled brick look. And then on to adding some coal out of just rocks and stuff. I was already at the bottom of the map, so I couldn't sink in the rocks into the ground like I usually would want to, but again, this is the bottom of the map. Did some fire and some blazers, I think, at the bottom to give some more color and sound. And then add my wonderful smokestacks on top. Did 8 at the beginning, was too much, and then I just did 4. So when something's like too much, it's always the best way to go back and do something very simple than overdoing it, because I think overdoing it sometimes distracts from the actual build or the final product of said build. So here's an interesting, cool little technique that I figured out. You have to have construction anarchy installed for this. But I took the text signs and did the dash symbol and colored it just close enough to the brick size, and making it down to 103 that it fits perfectly in the size of the bricks, and I can make bricks kind of pop out a little bit and giving it that extra different texture and color of disdained bricks, because I always found that the brick walls were very very plain in color because you couldn't discolor it, and I want to make the bricks look really, really old and worn out, so I made them, well, doing this makes it add that extra detail. It is extra work, and it has an extra layer of maybe performance issues depending on the system you're running, but I think it pulls out really well, and I did that on the entire factory. So skipping ahead onto building some London buildings for the park on a different map. I did it on a sandbox map. It makes it easier to work in the map when I build offsite. So I'm offsite on a better plane of existence. Well, plane of existence, sure. It makes it easier to look around 360 to look at the entire build instead of there's another building blocking my view, or I can't see this and that. So this was easier to build offsite and kind of just focus on one building, because sometimes I get easily distracted from the other pieces of details around my map. So doing this helps in that way. It's a kind of a good way to go sometimes if you want to just build off-site. So I made little templates of those spaces that were missing in my map. So I just had those templates, copied them over, and then I have now just building 3 buildings on one city block, as you can say. So it's going to be a very simple tan brick building of some sort, or corner building, and then maybe a apartment building next to it. It'll be the gray, and the red became my warehouse. So I kind of just went back and forth with that. I also wanted to use some of the copper idea of roofing, because I did some research on some of the buildings back then in 1860. They used copper in some places, metal roofing, tile roofing in some places. And so simple things like that. I didn't want to go too overboard, but I think the details on this building actually turned out pretty well. It's one of my favorite builds that I worked on. Yeah, just finishing up doing simple border work and pillar work. Always a good way to do borders and pillars always on your buildings, because I feel like it adds more character to the building's style. And here comes the window technique that I learned from Pierre. So the squares are 0.90 and the windows are set on the 7th grid. And you just inlet them in. I think adding that little inlet, making the windows set in, makes it a little bit more, has more detail, more character again to the building. And then I did some border work on top for the roof. And this overhang of wooden, like a wooden stand maybe for a sign, and then some cable pieces that kind of hold it up in place. Nothing going crazy in detail, because I don't want to go too crazy, because I think that also distracts from what the actual building is and how it's going to set up in the future. So I know that while building this, I was thinking of what details I needed was some maybe shutters for the windows, maybe some brick to simulate that this is a plastered wall, not a brick wall, even though it's the same. I did some fancy detailings on the corners of the building to give it some, again, character. I feel like every building should have its own little thing to give it a distinct difference between each building that it sits next to. I did this little cylinder trick on top of the roofs. I'm not sure what this is. I would call this a vent, but I think it's actually called something else. If you know what it's called, I would like to know, because I don't know what it's called. But I try to mess around with different techniques on making it a circle window. So I used the text piece, the O, and then I think I did the minus symbol again to make some straight sections come off of it. So there's the circle, kind of inlets inside the border, kind of hides away, makes a half circle. And then I did 2 of these, I think, on the outside. Oh yeah, I tried to make like windows or something, but I made it straight across, and it worked out pretty well. I like the little detail on top, and it turns out pretty well. This building looked pretty nice. And then on to smokestacks. Again, every building should have a smokestack. It is London in 1860, so everything's smoggy and smoky and dirty. Wonderful stuff. Jumping over to maybe the gray. Yeah, I decided to do some little differences to the bottom. So maybe like a bookshop's at the bottom, so it has this redwood, like varnish look maybe, or something like that. It's very fancy at the bottom, but then the rest of the building is just an apartment, very brick-like. I took a lot of inspirations from a couple pictures offline. I mean, I did a huge like London research thing before going through, and then I just kind of go from there. Copied some things and trying to imitate what I saw in those pictures with pieces that I'm given in Parkitect. So I did the brick thing again too, I think. No, I don't think I do it here, because if I did too much of it, it probably would do too much in its well, the FPS would be down to almost nothing if I kept doing it. So I kind of think I skipped around depending on what the building I'm working on, because I feel like a blank wall doesn't look as interesting if it had some bricks poking out in some aspect. So that's what I believe of how it should look. So finishing up here on I did a roof texture with the cable pieces. Cable pieces are a little different thing to use. They're smaller in width than the border pieces. Border pieces are quite thick. So using these was a different way to make a different texture roof. And again, these are not colorable, so I try to make the roof match closely to that color. I kind of was just guessing with the color picker, and I kind of went pretty close to it. Yeah, I was testing it. It got pretty close, and I liked how it turned out in the end. And then I try to fix up some Z-fighting issues again. Z-fighting happens every once in a while where 2 pieces interact and they're on the same axis, or axis, I think it's called. And then I have this flickering of texture, so I try to make sure that nothing, breaks through that. And then on to building some shutters with the half wooden modern wall on grid 8, and kind of have them poking out a little bit. I think this is really a cool technique to do so. On this one end, I did straight walls because up against the gutter, so it kind of worked out in the end to kind of do it like that. I like how that looked, and it kind of adds some different. It's not all symmetrical. That's what I'm saying. It makes it a little different and interesting. Onto the back end. So this is the warehouse that I wanted. So I knew I wanted a sliding door of some sort in the back. Warehouses are very, very plain and square-like, so there's nothing crazy going on with how they're designed. They're designed to be very useful and basic and cheap to build. That's the way usually warehouses are, rectangles or squares. They're very, very simple roofs and a whole bunch of windows for natural light. So I took the hangar walls from the hangar set, made them look like sliding doors, and made one ajar open so we can see inside. So there's some boxes and some barrels and verandas for the wooden floor. And then I did the number 13 to be an unlucky warehouse, because why not? That's a very typical trope to use that number, 13 or 9 or 7 sometimes. So it's warehouse 13. So I was just kind of messing around with that. And then I finished that up and I placed it on the map. You'll see in a later POV, not POV, a tour. So onto the map where I felt like I needed to finish up covering up the depot that was there. I had some buildings over it originally. I had to start over, and I felt like adding a Ferris wheel, including a thrill ride and then plus a coaster, added some more variety in this little park's like section. Even though this would be part of a bigger theme park maybe, or a bigger map. So I had to figure out how to cover up this delivery building. Delivery buildings have an issue of building just giant squares over them, and they don't look as pretty. So I decided to build 2 buildings on top of it to give it that separation and give that illusion that there's 2 buildings here, not just one. So the objective was to make 2 different colored brick buildings, a gray and a red, and have them to be 2 different types of factories. So this factory is some type of gear wheel that would be why the Ferris wheel is sitting there. So the Ferris wheel is part of that factory, and there's going to be some gears on that Ferris wheel. I made it copper colored to give it that steampunk look or industrial look too. And then the red building next to it became a fish cannery, so it would be something to theme to canning fish in cans, and I made that just the second factory on top of the rest of the depot. And I felt like that there should be like so many factories in this area. Again, this is an industrial place, so more factories I think is the best way to go. So that's what I did. Just kind of went for my basic factory look with smokestacks and some angled roofs with windows, and again with a whole bunch of corner brick again to give that structure, looking at like these are massive buildings of some sort. I almost forgot to add restrooms to this map, so I had to add a restroom next to the Ferris wheel, and I think it worked out that it's on this side of the land instead of like being in the front. Oh, the other things that I forgot to mention, which I did not record, and unfortunately I should have, but I got busy. I built a tavern that is also up toward the Nolan's steelworks, so you'll see that probably in a cinematic view at the end of the video, so stay tuned, and a POV of the ride as well. I made some copper. These are copper like supports out of steel, so green steel or something like that. I don't know. So maybe they're painted, and I made them extra thick by just layering borders on top of each other, and then some concrete pillars to kind of give that structure a strong look, and then added a crossbar toward the center of the Ferris wheel and give it that. This is a Ferris wheel part of a factory or something. I don't know. It was just kind of just winging it at the point. Again, also I wanted to finish the map up too. I was getting kind of tired of working on it. That happens sometimes when working on projects this big or long, or you overthink it sometimes. And so some lazy work comes out of me a little bit, and I don't like to always show that off, but sometimes it happens, and it's okay to be like that, be a little lazy work, but not too much that it actually destroys the project that you're working on, because again, it's the balance of it can destroy a project, and sometimes that's a bummer that would happen. So this is just border work again. I call this grunt work, just doing the same motion over and over again. Same thing with the bricks also, kind of just doing that over and over again. And as you do more of these grunt work, sometimes this actually shows off what your building is going to be like at the end versus just staring at an empty piece of wall or something, or a corner of it. So adding these little details gives the building a bit more realism in itself, because if you walk around your city or something, you look at buildings, you'll see that they have a lot of little details on their roofs and their walls, the corners of their buildings. There's like little details on windows. Smokestacks have a different variety, oh my gosh, to them and things like that. So it's kind of good to kind of look around real life stuff, and you can pull inspiration from those and use those in Parkitect, because most things translate pretty well into Parkitect, except for maybe like a very curvy arts building would probably be almost impossible to build in Parkitect or something. But it's a good idea to kind of just pull from there and do like a search through Google to kind of see what real buildings would do and stuff like that. Here I did a cable thing for the factory or the cannery, kind of just messing around with pieces, experimentation. It's okay to experiment. I think it's the best thing to do, because that's how you get new pieces and stuff. If you experiment with different parts, and I've been experimenting with this build a couple times, getting some things I want out of it. So I did the top of the smokestacks with this factory. I want to try to add some scaffolding, but that didn't work out. The smokestack kind of copies the one that's next to Gears of Progress, and then at the end I needed to add a actual sign, so I called it CB Cannery. So if you understand what that means, then good on you, you know the joke. And I'll hopefully Coaster B understands the joke too when he sees this map, but we will see. But I kind of figured I needed a name of the factory and then a fish. I don't like this fish that I made. I think there would have been a better way to make the fish. But again, I was experimenting and learning from my, you want to call them mistakes or something, or the different method of what I was trying to do. But I think this fish didn't turn out as well. I used some weird pieces when I didn't really need to. So again, it's okay to make mistakes or make something ugly, because I feel like this fish is ugly. But you might not, I don't know. But I think this fish could have been way better in its detailing. But again, I think it worked out pretty well because it says CB Cannery. And I did some basic... The fish is just ugly. I just don't like it. Yeah, the tail could have been maybe done better than a triangle piece or a pyramid. And then I did some cylinders for its fins, and it just... it didn't work so well. I tried to do a fin too, but the wall pieces are just too big. The sign's very small-ish. It's very smallish. It's also, I don't want to make it too big either, but I think it's okay. I don't like it. I still don't like it. I'm not going to change it because the map's already done. And I got other projects to work on, like some big project. I'm doing I'll just tell you a little bit now. I'm doing a theme park right now, and you'll see that in the next coming videos or so. Theme park of some sort, and it's completely different than my last theme park, so less sci-fi but more historical buildings or something you want to say. I'm not going to say exactly what it is yet until the video's more put together, but I have to go edit that as well. I have already built a lot of that park. You might have seen it already maybe on Reddit or something, so you already know what it might be. Some of you might not. Depends. So just finishing up some detail work. Burial grounds for dirt. Added a extra door on top to kind of give it that, needs a warehouse type of feel. They need multiple levels to deliver stuff, and then it looks like a factory. I like how this ended up. And then that back wall back there does not become like more facade. I kind of got rid of it. I felt like it was adding too many facades, and it was ugly. So here is a POV of the ride, and then there'll be a short cinematic afterwards showing off the rest of the park. So I'm going to let you guys go. Hope you guys enjoyed this last episode of Gears of Progress. It is now on the workshop. Go enjoy it, and then I think Coaster B is probably going to make a video on it very soon, so keep an eye on that as well. So see you guys later. Bye.